the Brandon Ingram piece. When you said that, Derek, it made me think about the financial piece. Of course, is different because he's younger, and you have to re-sign him, and bring in Zach LaVine, and you would have to take on his contract. What are some of the player issues that you had with Zach LaVine and you may have with Brandon Ingram that are similar? But of course, with the younger and the contract situation, you would just simply be willing to accept it for what it is.
Yeah. Well, they certainly have similar deficiencies, like in terms of, especially defensively. Like Brandon Ingram off ball, I think can be pretty bad defensively, and he would probably frustrate me. Part of it is a contract. Like he's at $36 million for next year. That's lower. I think there's some hope that you can get him on a sub, less than what Zach LaVine will make over the next couple of years. So because he's not locked into that big dollar contract for after this one, there's some hope that you might be able to get him, like I said, cheaper. And I've seen Brandon Ingram when he's in a catch and shoot spot. I think I've seen him make them at a pretty good clip. So I think maybe you can get him to change his roles. And if he's not on ball quite as much and he's not settling for the mid-range, he's more comfortable launching threes. Maybe you can get that three-point volume back up to where it was a couple of years ago. I think moving him off ball some will help with that. But it's not like they're both imperfect. It's not a slam dunk. When you start getting down to like option 4 or option 5 or option 6 or wherever these people would be, it's living with the flaws that you're willing to live with. And part of it just seems like Zach LaVine's, they both have scary injury histories. It just seems like Zach LaVine has a little more of a chance of catastrophic injuries in the future, and that factors into it too. But they're both very imperfect for sure, and that's sort of why I brought it up.
I do think the LaVine three-point shooting volume is a pretty significant edge sure. If you're talking about how do they translate to a Sixers-specific scenario.
I think what I was trying to say is if you move Brandon off ball, that gap might close a little bit.
Well, look, he has the mechanical skill that if he is willing to take those shots and you drill into his head, like, look,
Ingram.
Offense is running. Yes, the offense is running through Joel at the nail. He's going to get doubles. You will get repeated open three opportunities. If you can take advantage of them, there's a lot of money on the table for you to pick up, right? Because when the volume has been there, we talked about it when we did the whole Brandon Ingram show, when he was shooting, 6+ threes a game or in the neighborhood of 6 threes a game, hitting them at a pretty good clip. I believe it was in the high 30s, if I remember correctly. The difference with LaVine is you don't have to correct him in terms of the willingness to shoot. And that also is reflected in you don't have to change his shot profile as much, right? Like Ingram, you have to get away from those mid-range spots that Joel likes to operate in. And I think that might be a tougher task than, like, if you were to say LaVine wants the ball too much in his hands, and with the three guys they have, you don't want him dominating touches as much as he might want. But I don't think it's like a drastic, dire problem if he does, because he's still helping one of the main problems that you've had around Joel Embiid, which is just getting enough threes up, like putting the shots up that need to go up. Will he get to the mid-range and shoot some bad shots from time to time? Of course. I'm not sitting here saying LaVine is a perfect player, but they're in, I'd say, roughly the same neighborhood as playmakers. Ingram actually might be slightly better at this point, but that's only because I think he's taller.
Yeah.
And some of that is just slightly taller. He's 6'8", and LaVine's 6'5", 6'6", somewhere in that neighborhood. I think he's slightly better as a playmaker, but I don't necessarily care about that difference all that much, because if they're in that off-ball, playing off a Joel and Tyrese type of role, I care about, are you a play finisher? And I think on top of the volume and three-point shooting, I think LaVine, with his athleticism, assuming he still has some after all these injuries, as a cutter and as a finisher at the rim, I think he can do some stuff that Ingram has struggled with at times.
Yeah, Ingram shot close to 4 threes a game, 35%. LaVine, 35%, but he did take close to 7. And I know you guys are big on the volume that is taken. And if you're behind the three-point line, that ball swings to you from Maxey or Embiid off of that double. Which one would you prefer to have there? And we've seen where Zach LaVine can go off from behind the three-point line if he has one of those types of games.
Yeah, no, I trust Zach LaVine as a high-volume three-point shooter more, for sure. There's no doubt about that.
We all silly like the mayor.